Are we good to go? Are we up with you? Cool. Then I can say welcome to our special board meeting study session. We'll call this meeting to order and we'll start with our pledge of allegiance. Everyone please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next we'll have our roll call at Clerk.
Director Ray. Director Kelly.
Aye.
Here. Director Kingman.
Here.
President Levesque.
Here.
Director Knapp.
Here.
Student Advisor Schroeder.
Here.
Student Advisor LeBon. Superintendent Sweet.
Here. All right, thank you. Next, we'll have our approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes that they would like to propose to the agenda, or do we have a motion to approve it as presented?
Motion to approve it as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Madam Clerk.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye. Thank you. And the next part of our agenda is our welcome and our overview of our evening and our learning outcomes. And Dr. Sweeting.
Good evening. We are going to engage in some learning to start with and then some discussion about proposed study sessions for next year. But before that, we're going to hear about some data and results of our discipline and attendance and then restraint data as well and reasonable force. And all of those two things will be followed by an executive session. So that's the agenda. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Gary Ferguson for Equity and Student Wellbeing. And I'll give you the should go.
Thank you. Right. So this is a yearly review of policy 3241, student discipline. Presenting data to you around disproportionality and also incidents by school. And I've also shared this with the 8th committee because that's also part of the policy. And the main points of policy 3241 is to at the best try to keep our students in school, but also keep all students and staff safe at the same time. And then conferring with families to figure out best practice and best for their own students. And then always, no matter what discipline or suspension, emergency expulsion, we have to provide schooling. So what that schooling looks like may be different than what they currently are experiencing, but we do have to provide educational outcomes. So here, discipline incidents by school. So the blue bar is emergency expulsions. That's mainly when we have a student that has made either a threat or we need time to just have that student out of school to do some investigation. We issue an emergency expulsion. By law, we can keep that student out up to 10 days. Most of the time, we make a decision before that 10 days is up as far as what schooling looks like for them. Then in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions. I combine elementary. We don't really normally suspend at elementary. Sometimes we have, but we don't. That's not our first go-to. And then you can see Howler and Post, then Arlington High School, and then Weston. And then disciplines, incidents by student group. So this is part of the policy, is to look at disproportionate data to see if some of our students groups are being suspended more often than others. Again, blue bar is emergency expulsion, orange is in school, and yellow is out of school. It's out of order a little bit, that's why I'm hesitant. It's gonna go in. There were a couple of slides that didn't get put into here.
Attendance is at the back end.
No, it's part of the discipline.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So. Here we are. So my student group, the one slide I'm missing that is important to share is what our discipline incidents have been. So. This one. So our main number of incidents that we've had is fighting without major injury. There've been 63, go back to here, of our suspensions. 63 of those were for fighting on campus without major injury. Our second highest, right below that was 62 was, and you guys have heard me talk about this before all year, is our vaping of nicotine. And then our next highest one is vaping marijuana. So those two continue to be our biggest struggle as far as how do we be proactive, but also reactive with students. And we've actually put some things into place this year and talk about what to continue with that for next year.
I have a question about the.
Yeah.
So if you're vaping something that is I don't even know what cigarettes are today, are cigarettes 18? I don't know. 21 for cigarettes, 21 for marijuana, across the board.
Yeah.
So it's illegal out on the streets to be doing that, but if you're caught in a school, are students somehow protected, or like, where does that fall into the category? I'm not worried about cigarettes, I am talking about the marijuana.
Yeah.
Part of it, and not the nicotine. So when it comes to marijuana, what role does I want to say like law enforcement have? Yeah,
They're not protected, but law enforcement is dealing with so much more outside of schools that unless we find students that have more than marijuana on them, we normally don't call in law enforcement. But if we see heavy duty drugs on some of our students, we have involved law enforcement into those conversations.
and that's okay. That doesn't put the district at any liability because they're doing something that's illegal by any other standard, any other circumstance. No, okay.
I don't think so. I mean,
I'm just asking because, I mean, again, if they were
Yeah.
walking through Safeway and Arlington person's in there and he pops on this, says, I'm gonna check this and it's marijuana, there would be a legal consequence. So I'm just curious. I'm not saying either way to do that. I just want to understand what our policy is and make sure that we're not putting ourselves at any kind of risk. So if we could find out
yeah.
what other schools are doing or
Yeah,
what.
well, and I'll talk to Officer Bauer too, because he's our one that's our one that we would call in. But we've had, honestly, I don't know this for sure, but I don't know even if they're out on the street and get caught with marijuana, I think it's gonna happen either, because we're dealing with so much more than that.
If a student, if they suspect they are
Selling, yes,
that is definitely the police.
Yeah.
Because that's the tipping point,
Yeah.
is when they believe that they're being sold to other students. And it could be they would seek advice from Officer Bauer, in an individual basis to
Right.
see where the threshold is.
and that's what we look at to see how much they have on them.
Yeah, that would be an
That's when
indicator.
yeah, for sure.
Well, maybe.
And what else they have on them.
Okay, okay.
And, a little knife that's cutting stuff up.
I mean, part of me in my heart is saying
I know.
that it's a little bit of an alarm. I mean, I get it. We're not wanting to spend our time policing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of a pass, like, oh, we don't gotta worry about it at school because nothing's gonna get done anyway. So that's my concern. I'm questioning
Yeah,
this.
no, I get that.
Yeah.
They do get a
Give
suspension,
a consequence.
and parents get called. And then that, and hopefully there's some follow through with that part of it, right?
And is there anything that happens if you were to have the same student have this like 5 or 6 infractions, like does this build?
Yeah, there's progressive.
There's a progressive,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Our first time we catch a student with any type of vape is an in-school suspension. What we're looking at for next year is what type of education can we provide those students when we catch them with that, because it's an addiction at that point, right? I mean, they can't go through the school day without not vaping nicotine or marijuana. And so what do we need to do to help that addiction? Suspending isn't gonna do it. We know that, right? So, but at this point, I mean, every district is across the board is really dealing with this. Yeah. So, this one, percentages of incidents by student group. So this is broken out by our student group. The number of I just did secondary, so that's middle and high school. Number of students that we have in that student group. And then the number of incidents that student group has had, discipline incidents. And then the percentage, so this is where we're like trying to find that disproportionate. So the number of secondary students is 1.2 with our American Indian, and they've had 2% of the discipline incidents. So last year, our white students had more discipline incidents than what their percentage of the student group was. This year, it's the multiracial by about 8 percentage points there. So looking and tracking this data to make sure that we don't have that trend of the same student group is having more discipline incidents. So 237 students account for the 465 discipline incidents when this data was pulled. Overall, discipline numbers are higher than last year, but it is that vaping. If we didn't have that be such a high number, we would be pretty consistent across the last couple of years besides our COVID years. I've already talked about the highest infraction. In-school suspension are the most common type of suspension. And then I talked about the disproportionate data. So one reason, next steps. So talked a lot about this year. We put some things in place. We had 5th grade, all of our 5th grade and all of our middle school students go through a vaping presentation by Snohomish County Health. Also, Arlington Youth Council put together a presentation to go into our elementary schools to give them, or middle schools to give them information. One thing, when I presented this to ACE, one question that came up, and I can't remember who asked it, but I know pre-COVID, we had, through Providence, actual organs being brought in that showed students what happens if you are, and that time it was probably the nicotine and tobacco. But that's kind of a wonder. I wonder if we still have that type of presentation and if we can get that going next year. Because I think it is so telling when you see that for the student, right? Like, oh my goodness, yeah.
That reminds me of in my generation going
Yep.
to school, they had a program called Scared Straight. I think some of you remember that, and it worked.
Drugs?
Drugs. And
Yeah.
you show all the horror stories, you
Yeah,
show the
yeah.
real life emergency rooms,
Right.
and you scare them straight, and it
Yeah.
works for some people.
Yeah.
Maybe the program you're talking about includes some of that.
Yeah. Wait, and
Lady is the.
I know she was in Skagit County, but is there one from Snohomish County as well?
I think
Or is it just the same? Okay, yeah. And I don't know if that's still happening, but I was gonna look into that.
What about any students that have gone through the vaping and maybe gotten clean? Like, I wonder if
I wish
that's.
I could find somebody. I don't know. That's.
Come on, that's not be so.
No,
I say that
no,
because
that's good.
when I was in school, I remember a guy who was a jock, that's what we called it back then, he was a jock, he was in all the sports. And then he kind of came forward and said, he did a presentation and said, I was taking my mom's checks, I was writing checks. I was like, no way, this kid did drugs, like, it's so not what I expected, but for him to say that, really, like the guy next door, right? And so that was relatable to me. And I would think that there's gotta be someone in their 20s that maybe did these experiences in high school, like.
Well, I even wonder about some of our juniors and seniors that tried it in middle school, because some of our data that Snohomish County Health, I think I shared this before, is most of our middle schoolers that tried vape for the first time have no idea what's in that vape pen. That's scary to me, because that tells me that peer pressure or just wanting to feel like they belong or whatever, they'll try, and anything honestly can be in that vape pen. It's not just nicotine or marijuana, anything can be boiled down to a liquid and put in it. So,
I think that's a good point, because like when I was in school, it was like the dare, right? And then
Oh, yeah.
I go to school, and
Oh,
there's
yeah,
a
dare.
crashed car and
yeah.
whatever. I just remember the car. I don't even remember like what we were saying.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if it's like, what's the reasons why we're vaping? You know, like you just kind of touched on it, like, why are they trying to like fit in and, you know, do what everybody else is doing and taking such a big risk? It's like kind of getting to the underneath of it.
Well, and that's where,
Probably,
where our healthy use survey, it showed that students are getting the vape pens from parents or friends. That's where
Have you seen the collection that the principal at Post Middle has, the big,
Yeah.
again, in bag?
Oh, my goodness.
It's this big, full of various types of vaping devices. I asked her to see it, but I didn't know what one looked like. She was, oh, there's 20 different kinds.
Oh, yeah,
Show me her collection.
we can't keep up. I mean, one of them looks like a USB drive.
So that's what I'm used to
Maybe
thinking.
the
They just
parents
pick it.
need to need help with this.
Yeah, so what's the
Right.
parenting piece of that for next
Right,
year
because
too,
of
is in my
friends
head.
and- Yeah.
You know, I think Jim, think about Mary, her previous PTA guru. I'm like, would that be something? I mean, to me, we need
A bunch
education.
of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do we do that? Do we currently do
It all
that?
kind
We
of
don't
stopped
currently do that, but that's something we've talked about
Okay,
for
well,
next year.
Post-COVID, I think that would be a way to, yeah, channel that parent,
sure.
get them on there.
Well, because we don't know even what we're looking, I mean, we think it's a USB drive sitting in our kids' bedrooms, right?
Yeah, there was a drug awareness coalition and they had
Yeah.
presentations, like what is hiding in your
Yeah,
kid's room?
yeah,
And they had like a display of like a bed and a dresser and like a kid's room.
Uh-huh.
And then hidden weird things and weird places, and none of it looked like drugs and none of us could find any of it.
That was the Becky. That
It
was
was not.
The one thing I keep thinking about whenever I have this conversation is the Nerds Rope wrapper. That looks, that is,
Really?
you can buy, when it's laced with, you can buy the Nerds laced with marijuana. And the only thing that's on the packaging differently, the colors and everything, the lettering is all the same, except for there's a little marijuana leaf at the end
That's the tiny
of
little.
the wrapper. So that's, yeah. Okay, next, attendance.
Can I ask a question about?
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Discipline data. There was quite a difference between Post and Howler, and I was wondering if you could explain what kind of conditions existed at Post and how it varied from Howler and the first one.
So a couple of differences with Post and Howler. Post has about 100 more students. So bigger, bigger school. They also house the EVD program, which some of those incidents are coming from those students, and those students have a lot of them. And then, Post. Howler tries to, before issuing a suspension, they do some other interventions first. And so even though we have the same amount of incidents that happen at Howler, they don't all get as a
So there's
suspension.
a first step first.
Or, yeah,
Would it be helpful if Post adopted that?
we're getting there, having conversations. Or the opposite.
Or the
right?
opposite.
Are we not, or does this student really should have been suspended for that and that's not happening, right? So both of those conversations, so our data looks
It would be helpful
consistent. Yeah,
to know what the actual truth.
yeah. Agree, right, I agree.
If we have two different sources of truth and apples and oranges, how are we comparing?
Exactly. Well, and one thing we can start to look at is incidents by school by year. So just looking at Howler, right? Are
Yeah,
we
public school.
decreasing the number of incidents? And same thing with Post, is from year to year, just looking at that one building. Are we decreasing the number of incidents, or are we having other interventions that we put in place first? So that's one way to kind of try to score.
And Terry, can I ask about how long have we been, pulling kids for vaping? Because when my kids were in high school, they were like, oh yeah, so-and-so does, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I just feel like it feels kind of newish.
I think it was last year newish, I mean, no, but I wasn't
I
here
see.
before that, so.
I vape my
But that was
20-year-old
COVID too,
learned
right?
how to vape in seventh grade.
So that
was
would've been 7 years ago.
and It's been a
But
problem.
have we, okay, but how long has the district itself been like tracking it? Yeah, I don't think that's still pretty new, I think. I mean, maybe right before COVID or after.
Yeah, it depends, like on the Healthy Youth Survey, they ask questions, and so I think it's been on that, but not as overt. I think that the ones are more overt.
Okay.
Yeah, they are.
And this, I'm saying the consequence that we as a district have been imposing has been kind of recent, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
But the usage has increased.
So,
right.
It's not that we haven't noticed, it's just it has increased.
Okay, the incidents have, okay.
Mhm.
I mean. But vaping's been around for a while.
Yeah.
For sure. But when you look at the different devices, that they have now compared to what they had even like a year ago or 2, I mean.
Right, the sweatshirt strings,
Right,
right? I mean,
that's what it's backpacks, yeah, like the.
If they're a
Yeah.
cartridge.
Like a little, yeah.
Like the camel, right, but it's right.
yeah. So it really is that, it's not about them not having access to a vape device, it's we need to educate. And that's why we decided to start that education piece in 5th grade before they get to middle school. So hopefully we curb some of that for next year.
And part of the, why we joined the lawsuit too, the junior lawsuit, is that the marketing strategies are over the top. And that they use, I don't know, the flavors
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything, and even the way they look,
Yeah,
it's.
and when they came and did the presentation, they did talk about the marketing and how they're just making money. Yeah, any other questions? All right, attendance, overall district attendance. This is all the schools are actually up by 2 percentage points from last year, so we are getting better with that. I think we have more students that doesn't look like it sometimes when we're in the middle of the day and looking at, the reports of how many absences some of our kids have, but hopefully we're starting to lessen the number of students that are having so many absences. And one of these, I talked about this before too, is I've gone to truancy court now a couple of times to support our buildings that have filed petitions. And it is a really positive experience for families and for schools there now. So the last couple weeks, a month, we've been really starting to file some truancy petitions just to get it in the court system so that we can lift possibly the stay right at the beginning of next year and not have to go through all of address the barriers before we can file the truancy petition. So we've been doing a lot of that in the last month, so that if we continue to see that student not attending school, we can immediately lift the stay and go to court. Because there are some positive options now for kids that the Snohomish County is trying to have just to start to re-engage our kids back into life from COVID, being isolated so much. And that may not be going to Arlington High School every day, but let's provide some type of class at night or on the weekend that is an art class if you're interested in that. So it's trying to just start to re-engage some of these kids that are really struggling with coming back to life. I've been calling it. So since schools aren't as nervous about truancy, I think prior to my role in this position, what I remember hearing even when I was at Pioneer is that schools get hand slapped when they would go to court. And if you didn't have your I's dotted, your T's crossed, you were kicked out and said you didn't do it right. So come back when you have the right paperwork. It's not like that anymore. So trying to change the mindset in the schools, if it's okay to file a truancy petition. And even talking to parents about, you're not gonna be fined, because that doesn't happen anymore.
It's like a
But
library
it's really about trying to provide a positive intervention to get your student back in school, so. So by student groups, Presence Elementary, it's pretty consistent across the board. We don't have a student group. Last year, you probably don't remember, but our Hispanic group at President's was quite a bit lower on their attendance rate than our other student groups and their overall district attendance. So that has leveled out now this year. For what reason, I don't know why it was, but
Because COVID still has back this year.
could be. Yeah, because I mean, think about last year, we had to go out 10 days, right? If you were even exposed. So it really, yeah. And then if you live in a bigger family, then your exposure is a longer time cycles. Eagle Creek, pretty consistent across. If there were fewer than 7 students in any student group, I just didn't put the data in there. Camp Prairie, fairly consistent across. Pioneer,
What were the numbers before COVID? Is it 92, 93?
no, I was trying to remember that. I don't remember anything. And I know that at one point, our numbers were pretty low as far as elementary comes forward. We did a big elementary push, you know, with the incentives and the monthly parties and that kind of stuff, but. Yeah, I would say probably 92, 93.
We go back. To the. Just trying to look at the.
Number of students, yeah. Our. I went to high school. I would say for such a big school, the numbers are pretty good. And then Weston, they've done a. If they continue to really try to address the attendance, and they've gone up 2 percentage points this year. That's a pretty good increase for the number of students that are there.
That's Lizzie's wording. Yes, it's always.
Maybe it's the. Yeah. You just have one more day. Right. And then, if you remember in the fall, I brought you the initial, mental health was that new attendance code that we had this year. That families or students could call in and have a mental health day absence, and it is an excused absence if it's claimed. We were wondering what that would look like by this point in the year. So fall totals for elementary, total number of students that had at least 1, but fewer than 5 excused mental health was 15, and now is 88, 6 months later. But what I like seeing is that the total number of students with more than 5 excused absences with mental health has only gone up 5. Yeah.
Do the elementary families really know about this option? Do we advertise it?
I don't.
Gary's, I just heard a single Gary message. Nope, okay. So the 15 families know about it.
Well, there's 89 though by now.
Yeah, but that's all of elementary.
Yes, yeah.
There was some communication.
Yeah.
Wasn't there? We did, but you're not, I mean, it's a new law. and-
Well, these same families were having excused absences, they were just calling in sick. Right, so now they can actually call in and what we want to see, and that's why I do pull the mental health absent report every couple of weeks, is we are looking for those students that have that pattern of mental health absences. So that we can reach out as counselors or administrators to be able to have the conversation of, do you need help, and is there something we can do to help you? So that's really, I mean, I don't mind having this as an absence code because it provides us with different information that we may not know about and we need to know about. Middle school, kind of the same. Still only 1 more student than in the fall that has the 5.
So I'd be curious, would be tracking the families, like if you have a family with 3 kids, that would be curious. Right, like
Yeah.
one's mental, we're all just taking a mental.
Yeah.
So there's 10. Maybe,
all kinds of reasons.
for a reason.
Yeah. And then high school. Still, I'm not surprised that there aren't more,
24 is not bad, you know,
with more than 5, yeah.
that including Weston then too.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
and only going up from 12 from, I think that was November, maybe, I can't remember when I presented this initially.
The code.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I was wondering, please remind me, I'm sure you're talking about, but like, what is the procedure? You know, you see this coming through. And you talked about maybe there was a follow-up or like outreach.
Yeah, so I pull, I have Sheila run me, it's an automatic report I get every Monday. I probably look at it every other week. I don't have time to look at it every week. And I just kind of take a glance through, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I would look to see if there were, 8 to 10. By this point in the year, I'm starting to look at, is there more than 20? If a student has more than 20 excused absences that were coded to mental health, and we hadn't already reached out to that family earlier this year for the same reason, I will email the counselor and the principal that's assigned to that student, so I'm talking Arlington High School, but I'm doing the same across the board, and just saying, hey, do you have any information on this student? Have you talked with this family? Is there something we need to do? And then if they hadn't, had that awareness, then they reach out to the family or talk to the student the next time they're there.
I remember when my son was having medical issues and then he had the extended, number of absences, and then I got the letter and it was, very scary.
Yeah.
And then thinking about, principal at Dixon 100 Mark, talking about how when they had the high level of absences, they were sending messages like, oh, we miss you. And then they kind of got some negative, or, some feedback from families, like that wasn't really helping. So I was wondering if they find that it's actually helping to reach out, or if there's more of like now you're shining a spotlight on, what maybe they don't want people to see, so.
Yeah, I think it's individual based, right? And that's why I reach out to the schools, because they know their students and families more than I do
Yeah.
necessarily. But Weston, they call on every student that's absent every day. They're just small. Like they have
I think it's that, that's like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
I was just wondering if they were seeing like a positive reaction and folks like appreciated the.
I think we have mixed reviews, but I think I haven't really seen a negative, I haven't heard about anything really bad or negative around this. And I think the difference now too is that mental health, there's not this stigma around it anymore. It's kind of more of an accepted, how can we help you? Let's wrap our arms around you and try to figure this out to help each other. About all this? Yeah. And that's my other wondering is, are students just not using that code? And they're using the sickness. So that's why I do look, I also pull a more than 20 days excused and or unexcused report. So that even if our students aren't playing mental health, there's a reason why they have 60 days absent, right? What can we do to help you? So I also pull that every week, and when I get a chance, I'll email out the schools and the counselors and the principals to say, hey, what's the story here? Take a look, what can we do?
So remember getting here, so if a parent was like, I believe elementary school, a parent called in and said, yeah, we need a mental health day. How many unexcused are we?
That's an excused absence, it's not an automatic excuse, and there's no limit
There's
on
no-
how many
okay.
they can use.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to track the data. Because if students, if they're using a lot of them, is there a bigger issue?
I just think that'd be something, even I'm in kindergarten and I have some kids with like 56 absences. And I can't say I would pinpoint anyone in my class in particular that's mental health, but I feel like that's a piece of educating the parent body, like, hey, if there's a struggle, like, if the child is feeling they're bullied, I mean, what that looks like for kindergarten is different than maybe a 10th grader, but I still think that that's a piece, and then we can call it something, and then we can address it, say, we have had this child for 3 years and we see these calls coming, so then we can, you know what I mean, so I feel like not giving them an out, but just more like, I want you to know this is available, because mental health is really important, because that's gonna help with the success of school.
Absolutely.
It's an impediment or, some things, so.
Well, and to reach out so we can help you and not feel like you're gonna get in trouble.
Well, I think it feels like you're a team, right? Like if that wasn't, you wanna feel like we're here for you, that your student is with us all day.
Yeah.
you're the parent, like, let's work together, right?
One reason, next steps, continue to put supports in place to re-engage students, remind families about the importance of regular school attendance. We need engagement board, then I talked about that Snohomish County Truancy Court is really a positive place to go now for most of our families and students. Any other questions?
I would say we had this conversation, I think when I was on this committee, we talked about making use of the school buildings at various hours of the day. And I think I read about some school in Michigan that was offering like classes at night or something. And I think we should explore it. I mean, maybe that's something this committee could talk about, or just really, COVID flipped us, so let's continue on. Let's look at strategies. If re-engagement looks like there's a pool of people who would like to come in and do some of these core classes, maybe you have a teacher, maybe you have a substitute, or a teacher who wants to work part-time and evening works for them. I kind of want to have no stone unturned, and I think that could be that step of, wow, the students have lots of struggles in 10th grade. If we offer them a couple things to kind of bring them back, they're on campus, like, I think once people get in there, and then there's some students that don't like 1,500 children around.
Right.
That just boggles them. They just can't handle that. And that's coming out of COVID, right? And we're like, oh, I can't handle it. So, it's like, yeah, let's look at some other options.
Right, policy 3246, restraint, isolation, and the use of reasonable force. This again is based on board policy. Annual reporting, use of restraint and isolation really is supposed to be used when there's only going to be a serious harm to the student or to others. We do not like to put our hands on students because that ruins the relationship right then and there. Serious harm, like I said, includes harm to self and other district property. We put interventions in place before we restrain or isolate. The one thing about the isolation piece, though, is anytime they're removed from their classroom for more than 5 minutes, it's an isolation. So it's even if, send out to the hallway or go take a break in the office, it is an isolation. And I'll talk a little bit about what I've discovered through looking at this data when it gets to that point.
What about being sent to a different classroom? Like a kindergartner sent to a different kindergarten class.
Like a buddy
So they're
run.
still
Yeah.
That's still okay.
And that's still okay, but if a first grader sent to kindergarten to figure out how to be better behaved with kindergarten,
Right.
is that out of?
Or a fifth grader gets sent back to the kindergarten
Yeah,
teacher
yeah, yeah.
to talk about.
This. Scared, take turn.
Yeah.
Is that considered out of?
Out of the classroom, yeah. Call it considered a classroom exclusion, yeah. So as you can see, this is just isolation. Incidents are going up. Again, this is a result of behaviors. It's really hot in here.
I'm just like, is it just?
No.
That was hot left, right?
I might be there with you, but yeah, it's really hot.
It's hot and, no.
When we open that door, then more circulation, and I come up with a window. Instead of 65, like, but I hope it's 9.
Just think of it.
No, it's warm. So isolation incidents by school. This,
I see a big bar
Yeah.
here.
and Howland has life skills, the life skills program, so that's part of that. And I'll just talk about this here, with the change of the guards at some of our schools. It's time to review what isolation means and when we have to fill out that documentation, because this is information is pulled from Skyward. If we are isolating a student but not putting it in the Skyward, then we don't have any documentation on that. So looking at this,
Maybe it's not entered everything into the thing.
right, so that's where it's an education piece for me in August with administration, because they may just not know.
Maybe Howler could teach everybody else what they're doing and it'll be the same.
Right,
It looks like Howler knows how to do it. correct?
because I do remember, and Eagle Creek has the EBD and then Pioneer has life skills, so those should be higher. But still, my wondering is, are we documenting consistently and the same across the building. So that's just something that's
And
coming.
who enters that, the administrator, or the teachers aren't entering it?
The teachers have a form to fill out. And then some schools have their secretaries input it, some have their,
Is that a referral form?
no, there's a different isolation or restraint form.
Is it a long?
Because I mean, I've had kids go out the pod, but I would never call it an isolation. So I mean, I'm
It is.
gonna say right now.
If it's more than 5 minutes. Ish.
I'm just saying, I'm gonna share with you, the ambiguity
Yeah,
is not helping.
Yeah.
That is not helping this. I'm looking at this data and that's off the chart, and I don't like to think that color's got it right and everyone else is doing wrong. I want to think that maybe other
we
people.
need to come to a happy medium. We need to come to an agreement on when you fill out paperwork.
Yeah, I would like to hear what that is and what you're gonna present in August. I would like to know what, like in writing, in what everyone's being told to do.
Yeah.
Because this looks not helpful to me right now.
Well, on this, so there are 255 incidents here and 27 students represent those 255 incidents.
That's the same, I know,
You know, yeah, so that kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. We don't have a lot of students that are being isolated. So we did have some students that are being isolated a lot.
Now, what if you vacate the whole room? And then the room leaves and the child's in the room, is that not, that's not called isolation, right?
That's called a room.
I say that.
I gotta look into the law.
I did that several times last year. I didn't know that was a thing, but I had to clear my room because of one student.
Yeah.
And like, that made no sense to me that 17 had to leave for one,
Right.
and one stayed in the room with no teacher. And then we all left and had a little field trip around the building and then came back. And so I'm very perplexed myself as an educator.
Yeah,
And maybe there's other people that have a similar question.
I'm sure.
But most, yeah.
But the administrator was probably in your.
Oh, there was an adult.
Okay.
Oh, no, this child is not left alone. I'm like, oh, that would. See, no, there wasn't, yes, that's why I was curious, I get confused on what my role is, like, I'm filling out a form, and then I would assume the administrator would then take it from there.
Yeah,
Because they got involved.
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I would assume as well. And then restraint,
That's all the school.
that's all schools, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and again, have the restraint, that's 43 students out of the 382.
Can you give some examples of what a restraint looks like?
Well, any staff member that is gonna restrain a student has been trained on how to do that, so if, it's a hold. Can't remember our
Like if they're kicking.
program, if they're going after another student and they won't calm down without us asking them to and having other interventions and they're going to hurt somebody or themselves, then if you're trained, you can put them into a restraint until they calm down. And once they calm down, then we release.
So we're just manually restraining them, we're not putting them in any kind of.
Contraption, no.
It's just the person, I call right response, you have to get, only so many people get this kind of,
Just with our arms and.
It's a hug.
Yeah, tight squeeze.
That-
And then again, this makes sense, Eagle Creek has our PD program, Pioneer has our life skills, Halifax.
Do you not have issues at the high school level?
You know, they probably get suspended at that point if they're gonna physically harm.
Yeah, because they're bigger kids, yeah.
Yeah. Their harm is going to be different than our little 6 and 7-year-olds, where really an adult can't
Right.
even safely.
No, that makes sense.
restrain,
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
bigger
Okay.
kids, so.
So how many students did that represent?
43.
So quite a few.
Yeah, absolutely, because we have 382 incidents, about 43.
Carrie, what about the data on those students going on? Like, have you tracked it? Where
I
you have-
haven't, that would be interesting.
I would like to see that. Yeah, I'd be curious, like, over the time, has this improved?
Yeah,
That's probably.
I would say based on looking at the data, yes, because
As they're moving on to.
Yeah, as they get older, you know, they do mature and they learn some strategies, so. And that's what we like to see is we don't have 224 incidents still continuing at our middle schools. Right? We'd like to see those numbers getting smaller. So again, like I talked about, that accurate reporting, revisit the law and expectations. And that reporting guidelines, having those conversations in August when we start the school year.
I was gonna say too, I think when Carrie was, I think you were at Eagle Creek, I think it was the police committee when you were principal, maybe. I remember having discipline data, and that was also that thing of like, well, we do this and then we do that, you know, so that's really, I would say that would be a really good goal for Arlington, just to really clean it up and understand what's what they're doing, okay, good or bad, and then just identify that, so.
I think it's good next step.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna exit. Is the Kraken playing?
Oh, no, come on, hey, they gotta do it tonight, they're out of town, right?
Yes.
Do you guys mind if we skip the break?
We're
Or do
skipping.
you want to break?
I'm skipping.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Enjoy.
Okay.
Go Kraken.
Thanks again. So this next section is about thinking forward to next year and how we want to come together as a board and learn and engage in professional development. And there's many different ways, but one of the ways, besides going to a conference or going to someplace outside of ourselves, is we have the study sessions. And so you have in your packet, first of all, the packet that we have that you picked up on the late note. It has, the first document are just the dates of our regular board meetings that we have. So those are the regular, they're set. And those are always on the second and fourth.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's right up here, yeah.
And they're, so you have that. The next document. This. The next document is just, it's a tool where we've listed out the months. And over on the right-hand side, it has topics, or it's the content of what we want to study or what we've been studying. So these are kind of topics that we've brought over that we've engaged in learning this year. So for example, in August, this coming August, we talk about setting the stage. We look at the results of the board self-assessment. You're going to do that. I'm going to give you the assignment again at the end of this session today. We're going to look at the results in August. We look at other survey results. We look again and do a final look at our goals that we had for this year, and then we set the goals for next year. So anyway, this is a listing of the different content areas and areas that we want to study to grow ourselves as a board. So when you look at that, the design this year has been that we do that on the opposite Monday, usually one Monday in the month, for about 2 to 3 hours. You know, that's kind of what it's been. So when you move down, we just want to make sure, and this adds up to what we did this year, adds up to about 30 hours. So if we go to the next, I'm going to show a couple of scenarios. So scenario 1 is the current schedule, the current design that we've done this year. And that's 2.5 hours about once a month, in addition to our regular board meetings. And that adds up to, you can see the little wording that beneath the title. That's 2.5 hours of PD once a month. And they started at 5. That equals 25 PD hours, excluding the 5.5 for the workshop that's in August. So the total is 30. Now, what I asked the wonderful assistant to do, Debbie Montgomery, she also calculated how much time, when we do this scenario, how much overtime, additional time do we have to pay as assistant for that support? Because it does make a difference, and we're looking for ways to be more good stewards of our time. Okay, so you can see for this scenario, the current one, about 40 hours of additional clerk time, overtime for that scenario. So that's scenario 1. The next scenario is 2, and this is where we would have an hour twice a month that's added to every regular meeting. So that would give us, so we would start at, you can see over here, 4:30 to 5:30, we'd have a half an hour and then we'd start our regular meeting. And this would give us a total of 23.5 ED hours and requires no additional work overtime. But it's every regular board meeting. Scenario 3 is the same, but adding an hour and a half. And I know your school gets out at 3:15
Yes,
and your last time would take you to 3:45. This would, you could barely get here at 4. Okay, so you can fly. So
I
anyway,
have your straight arrow.
so you can fly and get here, but this would give us twice a month. It gives us 32.5 hours, so more than we had before. And no additional overtime. That's 3. Scenario 4 is once a month, add an hour and a half to our regular meeting. So if you add, just do it once, like the last board meeting of every month. Then that would be 20.5 professional development hours, which is less than we've had this year. And no overtime is required. So,
so on those days, it would be, the last option is the early start, 4 to 5:30,
right.
have a mini break, and then come back with a regular board meeting on the second one.
So I guess I'm just asking the board, I've shared kind of the content, we can do some adjusting, with that. So I just want the board to discuss this, what your thoughts, so I can discern what the meaning is. We're just trying to get ready for next year and planning ahead.
Maybe we could all talk about our,
Like this, yeah,
Like some-
I think that's good, it's like a little, yeah. You wanna start with?
I like number 4.
Yeah.
Just because it seems simpler.
is that
The one where you do 4 to 5:30 once a month.
the October, November?
Yes.
4 to
That's
5:30.
probably the most appealing to me, but I'm just one of 5, so I'll go with whatever the team wants.
And is your schedule,
I can check.
you can adjust. Sherry?
Oh, I kind of immediately gravitated, other than flying over the bridge to get, here. I kind of like this scenario too, because I like the idea of once a month. And I'm already coming anyway, so it's in my brain to show up. Like that's already scheduled, that date's in my head, so, yeah, I kind of think, I mean,
Less days away from home.
yeah, the one, if it was like every week, I'm like, oh, I look forward to like, oh, it's a Monday.
It will be every other week, but it'll be every regular board meeting.
Right, yeah, this one I just like the one board meeting too, yeah, this is my preference right now.
Okay, good, thank you. Erica, do you have a preference?
Yes, I am pretty much in agreement with number 4. I think, originally looking at like number 2, where we were going 4:30 to 5:30, I was worried that that wouldn't be enough time. I feel like we're all talking at like 1.5 speed and not getting anything in. So I like the idea of 4 to 5:30, and I could either do, the once a month or the twice a month, whatever everybody feels is best. But I also feel like it is a responsible thing to do to have the overtime. And it is kind of nice to think about Mondays, having some Mondays at home. Because I do like the proposal of changing it at all, because I'm doing it every week, like either a study session or a board meeting felt very much like I was always trying to catch up.
It's a commitment.
Yeah, I was like, kind of need that space to like think and let things soak in. And so, yeah, what do you think?
Like option 4.
Yeah.
I will say the high school traffic sometimes does not get out until 3 o'clock. I'm gonna get home to change, which is about 25 minutes to my house.
Okay.
So for someone who lives far away, like that would be driving to school, driving back home, back to here, back to home. It's a lot of gas for a student.
Could you just come right from school or?
There would be a lot of, I'd probably get here, I get here like 3:20 out, but it's 30 minutes out.
Can study.
I think we get more.
That was an option.
And here, I was gonna say, you might need a little food incentive, I don't know, so that would be the crunch, I know for me, I dash them to and probably.
Yeah, we have to be careful about not providing dinner though, because that would have a great expense, but we certainly can have just like what we've been doing, just those
Yeah.
basic little. But not dinner.
No, not there.
Debbie, has our student advisor Mariska or Mike Ray joined us on Zoom? it'd be great to be thinking about who's not here. Next year we're gonna have another student advisor. I will not be with them.
But that's good feedback. I mean, there are definitely some people that are from. other spots.
And like, we'll have a new board member possibly, and just keeping things concise and connected seems like kind of maybe a better situation for the new people, but.
And we could try even 4:15, but I think, you know, I'm pretty conscious that we're lessening it by 10 hours already.
Okay, I think we have a consensus, right?
Right, we're not taking action, I'm just taking feedback.
Lots of good feedback.
Did you say what you were thinking there?
I am super flexible, I can do whatever.
Okay.
It's coming.
Okay, all right, so the next couple of slides really have to do with so we asked the question about during the study sessions, we have the OWL going. And I wanted to know if people were really watching the study sessions, because I know that it can be hard when we're engaged in activities where I don't know when I watch them, it's hard to know what we're doing exactly or listening. So I just wanted to see. So this is the last year, the viewings, the number of views for the YouTube for the study sessions, and you'll see the topics that were discussed. So just wanted to have that information. And then the next slide or the piece of paper that you have in your packet is I want to know what others were doing around us. So you can see that for Everett, for their study sessions, they do record and study session workshops recorded, yes. Study session with regular, no, they're not connected. So you can see all the way down, it varies. So some of the districts, they record and some don't, and some do both. And then you can see the locations. Pretty much, you know, for the regular board meetings, you know, I think the Zoom is what they do. So I just, as we anticipate where we would have our study sessions and the setup of all of it, I just want to know what the leans or what the feedback from the board is on that. And I don't know if any of you watched the study session on Zoom.
I've been on a Zoom study session and I couldn't hear any. It was pretty awful. I could hear the person that was closer to the microphone, but I couldn't hear any of the discussion.
It should be better now with the OWL, but if you notice, there are districts around us that do not record at the student session.
Out of how many families?
Well, we have,
District.
I don't know, Gary, how many families? How many families?
Compared to views,
No, no,
so
we
like
have the district total. Like we have 5,300 students, but that represents,
Yeah. Families.
Right.
Some people have more than one kid.
Yeah.
yeah, so
I
it's,
don't see it was like 3,500, I think at some point.
Okay. I was just comparing like how many views to like maybe how many families.
Yeah.
Of course, anybody watch.
Yeah.
and what we don't know is how long did they watch?
Oh,
You know, did
They've been
they,
popping.
did they get in
Okay.
and then it was too?
You clicked the wrong website.
We're not that, but you know,
It's not our.
Wow.
We're looking for only participants.
well, no, I think they put on and it was hard to watch.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and couldn't finish it. That would be frustrating for me because I tried to watch a couple and I'm thinking, I was kind of waiting for the action, you know, you're just kind of waiting for something to happen that's more, so you can tell what's going on.
Yeah.
And we do try to prompt the people that are on, that are watching or viewing it later, what's going on by putting up something like this that says we're doing this, but then they're just watching that piece of paper and they just hear the sound
That
around.
makes sense. That makes it look.
So just, I wanted to listen to some feedback about that.
And it's not required for us.
Not for study session, but for our regular. But we do it for our regular. I would not want to change that.
Right.
Because the difference is that you're not taking action. Now, if we do have a study session where we're gonna take action, I would say, like if we change, I would record that and have it on Zoom if there was gonna be action. Like the one on April 10th, that was about budget. That was a study session and we needed to have that on Zoom.
And we have 38 views.
If we were to have
Study sessions before the board meetings, and we'll just talk about what we have that are here and that have to do with the owl down in the board.
Well, we have two owls, one's up here,
Oh,
one's downstairs. And so, at a study session, it's nice to be in a more like open space. It's more conducive to
Yeah.
like activities. So like we can get up and do walk-arounds and do gallery walks and those kinds of things. It's hard to do that. And so I think if we don't, it'll be a lot easier if we don't videotape, that we can just be up here and then go down for the regular board meeting. So.
That's when the audio is the hardest, is when we're doing activities or we're in small groups and then. They're also get paid.
But if we decide to continue the recording, then I would probably lean towards doing both then downstairs. If we're gonna have them connected and we're gonna continue to record, then we would have them both downstairs. So you're not moving you just have one set up downstairs. And that would be complicated because we want to have tables and so I get a little bit challenging.
There's a lot of districts that don't record their study sessions.
That's right. Right. I think there's more.
I wonder what their rationale is as to why they are still recording and why the other ones are not. Kind of, yeah, some logistics or
I don't know.
maybe their technology is different.
The ones who are yes are in the boardroom.
Right, that's true. They all are,
Yep,
but the others are no, that are in different places.
I think there's a pattern there.
Good catch.
Maybe those are some of the libraries.
So just something I'll pull together, we'll certainly bring this back, probably during the June 5th study session. And I'll pull together, some ideas and the schedule and we'll go from there. Okay.
Yeah, and also I would just want to say like, when sometimes if I found myself not feeling well, and like, oh, I'm just gonna do it tonight on Zoom, so I want to make sure that, oh, it's one of those nights, it's the study session / board meeting. I mean, I just would want to make sure that if it was a recorded issue, or like, can I still participate in the study session?
Could you still go
Yeah,
on
via
Zoom
Zoom.
if it wasn't on YouTube? I would think, yeah, we'd still want to offer Zoom.
The ones that are not recording it still says Zoom.
Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
the Zoom, but it's just not recorded, right, Debbie? I have that.
Yeah, just if I could access the portal to, yeah, find all of my.
So they can be in it during real time, so
Mhm.
anybody can attend the
Right.
study session, real time, it's just not recorded.
Okay. I just like that option. It is nice knowing that if just something befalls you and you can't be in person, Zoom is a super great way to still participate.
And that's all I have.
Good. If you like how you presented all of the different scenarios that everybody else is doing, it is nice to know that we're not alone in this discussion. I like how transparent and open we are. I feel like that's a benefit to the community, but not a lot of people are taking it.
But they also can access it too.
Yeah. All right, does anybody have any comments about study session recording?
Some good feedback.
One more thing.
So you have an assignment, all of us do, myself included, Kyle included, Mariska. There is a board self-assessment. This is completed by each of us individually using the link. And we need to do it by June 30th. So you go in and it's based on the standards. So there's the 5 standards that we go by as a board, and you go in and you score it. And then I pull that together in August and we take a look at it. It's kind of similar to what
And you can include this in your board update on Friday.
I
At
can,
the link and then
Yeah.
just click it. We don't have to like.
Yeah, and then we go.
Right?
and we can send it to
Plenty of
you
time.
in an email too. We'll
Yeah.
put it in multiple places.
All the
So there's no excuse of forgetting it.
Right, and there'll be reminders. It's just, we get it done by the 30th and then we take a break and not think about it, and then we bring it back in August and review it. And we use this to drive our goals for next year.
Yeah, all right. All right, thank you. If you have any more hidden slides or anything?
I don't think so. I hope not. Sorry about that.
Our next regular board meeting is May 22nd, 2023, and then it's district office boardroom at 6. And I have a script to read for our. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is our executive session to review the performance of an employee, our one employee. So we will now recess this meeting so that the board may convene in an executive session to review the performance of an employee. I estimate the executive session will last approximately 30 minutes, during which time no final action will be taken. Following the executive session, this meeting will be reconvened for the sole purpose of adjournment. And it is 6:06. So then we're going downstairs to my office. Next, I'm gonna stop sharing with Debbie. Then I'm taking my phone with me, Debbie. This time. So I got my. Oh, Oh, that's right. Yes. Oh, yes, you know what, I'm just gonna go home. But it's a good question. Sorry, I need to get this. Yeah, but then you can here, we were gonna, that's so weird. And then well, pretty good mark. And then there's the extra.
Yeah.
We haven't published it yet.
Okay.
So yeah.
Combine that. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Putting
it in time normally.
Anyway, it's funny.
Yes,
He's busy, I can tell.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He's so happy. Well, and getting it through and getting it through ahead of time and. Oh, yeah. It is about one. Without.
So we could.
As I feel like I've corrected them. Multiple times.
I did email, Emily, they are aware of what's going on.
Well, maybe you bring her with. Maybe he could cover that and we give him we can read right after that.
I didn't hear what you have some.
It's a special and cool, it's an anniversary.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
so what I'm wondering is if he could come and she comes, her family's coming, and then you can read right after.
It's just at the top end of new business,
It's at the very beginning.
but it is simply amazing tonight. So that takes a little bit, but we could
We do go first.
actually, yeah, it's up to you. We could
Yeah, we'll
certainly
leave it there.
rearrange.
Okay.
And if it doesn't work on family schedule, it's extremely flexible. So,
Okay. They didn't say anything to you, did they?
my dad's retired, so he can do that anywhere, whenever.
Yeah, well, you just let me know. We can, the meeting is published.
Okay.
So we would need to know before we publish by
I
Thursday.
can.
So talk to your family.
I can shoot you a text tonight if that works.
Okay.
right, welcome back. We have finished our executive session and we are now here just to adjourn. Do I have a motion for
I move that
adjournment?
we adjourn.
A second.
It's moved in second and to adjourn. Yeah. Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque, aye. Director Knapp.
Aye.
All right, meeting's adjourned. Have a great night and drive safe.